Hey everyone, George here, and I'm back with another exciting Disney video. And joining me today, because I love having Disney discussions, you all know that, is my good friend over on the West Coast. I have Christopher with me, aka OrangeGrove55. Hey, what's up with you?
Hey, George. Thank you so much for having me on, buddy. It's always a good time.
Oh, absolutely. Especially now, I mean, because there's not really too much for us to do. So if we can't be at Disney, at least that maybe we can talk Disney.
That's true. Yeah.
So I thought today that we could kind of talk about uh, more so Disney and the recession that the country's going through right now because of like with the shutdowns, the quarantine, and practically everything at a standstill for about 4 months. And with Walt Disney World just recently opening on July 11th, and you guys over there are still waiting to hear what's going to go on with
Yeah.
Disneyland. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of talk on social media that Disney has this protective, magical bubble, and like no matter what happens, they're good to go. They're safe from the recession, and they can go decades upon decades. And for me, I personally feel like something's got to give, and you could only go so far, no matter how big of a company you are and how successful you are. That something's got to give. What's
Yeah.
your take on it?
Yeah. No, George, I completely agree. I mean, I see a lot of the same stuff on social media. Well, Disney's a multi-billion-dollar company. They can survive it. They can survive it. Yeah. I mean, for a short time, yeah, they'll survive it. But eventually, it's going to get to the point where there's always a breaking point. It doesn't matter how big a company is, but there's always going to be that threshold, that breaking point where they can't survive it, or they're going to have to offload things or sell things or downsize or something. Like Disney is a big company, but it's not invincible. It can't just go on for months and months and months with no revenue. I mean, I know some of the parks are still open, but it's really throttled in terms of attendance. It's really throttled in terms of money. Disneyland in Anaheim is still not open. The cruise lines got God knows when those will open, because that's even worse because you're like on a boat with everybody for a week. So that's probably even going to be way down the road. So yeah, I think that it's scary. It really is scary. For we love this company so much, and the thought of like serious damage happening to it because of the shutdowns is it's worrisome. I'm concerned. I hope that we can get the company moving again soon.
Yeah,
Very soon.
definitely. And I think Disney was on the right path with opening Walt Disney World on July 11th. And, a lot of people were saying, no, it's too soon. They can't do this, this and that. But again, at the end of the day, Disney's a company. They have to keep it running. They have to bring revenue in. And I'm glad that Walt Disney World still went through on reopening. And I had recently just done a video talking about like the changes and the budget cuts for everything. Now, do you feel that thus far of what Disney's doing, like with the theme parks and the hotels, not opening everything up at once, but like in phases and closing things, do you think that it was just because of being closed for 4 months? Or do you think that it was going to be Disney's direction anyway, but it just kind of pushed them to do it sooner rather than later?
Um, in terms of like you're talking about like phased openings, was this always
Yeah,
the
like
plan?
right now, like with the Walt Disney World hotels, like only a number of them are open, and they're now taking like more so like in clusters that they're reopening
Yeah.
them little by little.
Yeah, I think that that's probably always been the plan. I think they always kind of wanted to do a slow, reopen. I think that's like the safest in terms of the virus. I think that's also the safest in terms of PR. But see, the thing is that a lot of people, and maybe I'm misinterpreting or maybe I'm just not getting it, but a lot of people, they say this is like you mentioned, this isn't the time. This isn't the time. But what will be the time? Like if okay, perfect scenario, right? we shut down everything. We locked down, we shut down every business, every church, every whatever restaurant for 3 months. Well, in that scenario, yeah, the COVID cases are going to drop. Of course, no one's leaving their house. But the minute you reopen, they're inevitably the cases are inevitably going to rise again. Anytime you reopen, they're going to rise. And if we freak out, if as a society we freak out every time there's a rise because we reopen, we're never going to reopen. Yeah, we can also eradicate the flu if nobody leaves their house. We can get the flu cases down to zero if we all stay barricaded in our houses the entire flu season. But is that feasible? I don't think so, and that's kind of how I feel about COVID. I feel like we have to understand that when we're reopened, there's going to be more cases. It's the reality of the situation. There's more people outside. It's going to happen. We just have to learn to adapt to this situation like we have adapted to other viruses like HIV, AIDS, the flu. We've adapted. And COVID, we're just going to have to adapt. The fact of the matter is they're working on a vaccine or many vaccines, but one might not ever get approved. We just don't know. There might never be a vaccine. And even if there is a vaccine, it's not going to cure and erase it. Like we've seen with the flu, we have a vaccine for that, and still 60+ million people a year die from the flu. So we have to reopen. We have to adapt because there's just no other option. What are we going to do? We're going to stay shut down and have a Great Depression? Exactly. I mean, that's even worse.
Yeah, it really is. And with everything, then we're going to have people dying in another way. It's almost like, I know this is going to sound corny. It's almost like in Star Wars when Anakin did everything in his power to protect Padme from dying.
Right.
And from him doing what he thought was right, it ended up killing her anyway.
Right. That's exactly it, George. And these people that want to keep things shut down, their heart is in the right place. I mean, I fully believe that they really want to prevent the spread and prevent people from dying. But like you said, it sounds like Anakin Skywalker preventing people from dying. And you just kind of, it sucks. Every person that we lose is a tragedy. But like this, our society, our world has to kind of learn to move on and adapt to the virus. Otherwise, it's going to be a much bigger humanitarian crisis than we have now. A global depression or even a national depression would cause a bigger death toll. And, more people are going to starve. We're going to have more, unfortunately, more suicides and mental health problems. And it's just, it's serious. And we just have to learn to adapt, in my opinion. I think that's the only way we're going to move forward.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree with you with that. I mean, and I appreciate and respect Disney of how they're approaching it, because you always want to proceed with caution, right. So they're reopening, they're staying open, but then they're still taking the precautions so that way, they're not the scapegoat or the fallout guy to say, oh, we're contracting the virus from Disney. They're pretty much in the safe hand. Now, I can only speak of that for Walt Disney World. As far as Disneyland goes, the last time you and I had a conversation was you asked, what would be my rough guess of when Disneyland would open. And I thought, in a couple weeks from Walt Disney World, it'll be open in August, late July, early August. Well, July's passed. Here comes August.
Right.
And still no sign of Disneyland reopening. And it's coming to the conclusion of, is it even going to reopen in 2020 at all? And it opened in 21.
Right. Yeah. I made a video a few months ago, kind of laughing at the idea that, they're going to wait till 2021. There's no way. But now I'm kind of second guessing that a little bit, because I don't know. I really don't. I mean, I think that because it's not even really up to Disney in a lot of ways. Our Governor Newsom is hardline with this. He's really aggressive and doesn't, he's keeping things closed. I don't know when Disney's going to open. And here's the scary thing, because a lot of people kind of poo-poo Disneyland. Oh, well, it's a small park. doesn't really matter. It doesn't make much money. But that's not really the case. I've talked to a lot of people that work within the company and things like that who say Disneyland oftentimes kind of kind of keeps things afloat during economic hardships. And the reason being is because when we have a recession or an economic downturn, Florida kind of takes a bigger hit because it's very tourism based. You plan a vacation, you're there for a week, it's very expensive, it's a lot of planning, it's about out of state, out of country people coming in, where Disneyland is kind of more recession proof because there's a lot of annual pass holders who, even during a recession, it's basically free for them to get in. They can still go to the parks and still spend money and eat and things like that. It's like going to the mall basically in California, right? Where in Florida, it's like a full blown vacation where you're staying at a hotel, you're spending money on airfare, it's more involved. So Disneyland really does kind of pick up the slack during these economic downturns, and to have Disneyland completely shut down. And then Florida's attendance is anemic because no one wants to get on a plane, no one wants to fly, no one wants to travel. It's a problem. So yeah, Disneyland technically is a smaller resort, but I think it has a big impact when it comes to economics for the Disney company, especially during a recession.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely hear you with that because I have lots of friends and a lot of friends who are California locals, you included, that they just go, like, if they're at work or they're on their lunch break, they'll go over to the resort just to walk around, because they have an annual pass, or they'll run into the resort, buy certain merchandise and leave. So it's like a constant move, like no matter what time of day, what time of year, Disneyland is almost incorporated in everyday life as far as locals go in California. And then, as you said, like with Walt Disney World being that it's a tourist destination and there's not too much travel going on, it's like they're both taking a hit for two different reasons.
Yeah, completely. I really wish, like, I think Disney's ready to reopen Disneyland. I think the Walt Disney Company is ready to do it. They want to reopen. I think that really it comes down to California. I think Governor Newsom said he's not ready to release the guidelines for theme parks, and I think Disney is respecting that. But I think Disney is ready. They want to do this. They want to
Oh
reopen.
yeah, if it was definitely up to Disney, their grand reopening would have been on the 65th anniversary. I mean, it was perfect. It was
Oh
you
yeah,
couldn't set it up any better, and more so again with it being the OG park.
right. Yeah.
Best time to do it, and they lost their opportunity for it, unfortunately.
And they lost it. And there was a report recently. I mean, I unfortunately I don't remember what website it was, but I'm sure you guys out there, you can Google it. It's out there, where it even said that in Florida, there's been no outbreak of COVID that has come from the reopening of the Florida parks. And people say, like, well, Walt Disney World's only been open for a couple of weeks. Yeah, that's true. But Universal and like SeaWorld and the other parks have been open since early June. So obviously these theme parks are doing something right, because Universal, they've been open since June, like what, 2 months now? And we haven't seen an outbreak come out of that. Florida's Walt Disney World's been open for like 2 or 3 weeks now. No serious outbreak coming from that. So these theme parks, they have policies and guidelines in place that are working. And that's what's frustrating to me with Disneyland, because it would be the same situation here. They'd open, we'd have the social distancing, we'd have the mask, and there probably wouldn't be an outbreak stemming from Disneyland, but for whatever reason, California is really skittish on it.
And to be honest, I actually thought that Disneyland would have reopened first over Walt Disney World, because with it just being about a locals park more so,
Right.
Than it being a tourist destination, you would have even less people going there as far as if they feel comfortable with going right away or what have you, but you would just have your locals, and you wouldn't have to deal with a lot of Disney transportation because the parks are so far apart from one another that they're right across the way from one another, and you have so many people going in at once. And I think that Disneyland could have a much better control as far as the number of guests that they let in through the gates.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And knots, and I'm not a big knots person. That's more theme park wizards forte. I'm not a big knots person. But I think it's called the Taste of Calico, if I'm not mistaken. But basically what that was at Knott's Berry Farm was like they opened up like the ghost town, I think, section of the park, and it was like a food and wine festival basically, right? I heard it was fantastic. And it was a way for Knott's to kind of make a little money while, during this whole pandemic, well, not officially opening the theme park. And I think Disney would be smart to do something like that. Kind of think outside the box a little bit with Disneyland. Maybe open no rides. Maybe just have like a food and wine festival throughout the entire park, and each land will have, specialty foods based on the land. So Frontierland might be like barbecue ribs, a lot of like, that kind of stuff. And then like maybe Main Street would have like, Americana food, like the apple pie and, all that stuff, blueberry pie, whatever. But you get the idea. Open the park up, allow people to go in, maybe shop, but keep it mostly outdoors, like a festival kind of feeling, just to make some money, just to kind of have something coming in. And hopefully Disney takes some cues from Knott's and does that. I think that would be a good alternative in the meantime. Because, look, Knott's is in California, obviously, and the governor has not had any issues with Knott's doing that festival, so it's obviously allowed. So I don't see why Disney wouldn't be able to do it. I mean, if Knott's did it,
and especially since California Adventure. Now, you guys also have like your version of the Food and Wine Festival at DCA, right?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
We do.
So I mean, even if Disney was to do that, even too, I mean, still hold the Food and Wine Festival at DCA, pull it back some, add some extra restrictions, what have you. But as you said, just to bring in some revenue, or they could do both. They could have the Food and Wine Festival at DCA and then do like your, at each land have that type of theme type food, merchandise buying, and bring in some sort of revenue.
Bring in something. Yeah. I mean, like, because, Comcast, I don't know, you saw it or you heard of it or whatever, but like Comcast had their quarterly earnings report like 2 or 3 days ago, and it was pretty anemic as expected. I mean, it's during the pandemic, their parks were like, working at like, half capacity or something. But even Comcast mentioned that that their numbers are pretty bad, but they're better than they would have been if they were closed. They're not bleeding out as bad as they would have been. And I think Disney should really listen to that and be like, you know what? Yeah, they're right. Maybe we should do something with Disneyland where, kind of offset this a little bit. Maybe like, this festival thing isn't ideal. It's not the best case scenario, but it's better than nothing. It's some revenue. It's some profit.
And with me, I would take any golden opportunity just to be able to go into the park again, see the castle, see everything, hear the music, the sights, the sounds, the smells. I mean, that would just be me.
Oh, me too. Me too. Like people always ask me, like, oh, what's your what's like your to do? Like, what do you have to do when you go to Disneyland? There's nothing I have to do. I just like being there. If I don't go on, I've literally have gone to Disneyland and have not ridden one ride. I've done that before so many times. I'm totally cool with going to Disneyland, walking around, soaking in the environment, and going home. I just like being there. I would be totally content with that. If there was not one ride open, I'd be fine with it. Absolutely.
And I never really noticed it before until I actually sort of lived my vacation like a California local when I was at Disneyland for 2 straight weeks.
Yes, almost a year ago, like with D23, almost a year ago.
Yeah, exactly. It was later this month. Wow, that is crazy.
Yeah, it's weird.
That's wow. But yeah, I was there for 2 straight weeks, and there were times where I just sat on a bench and watched people. there were times where you couldn't even get me out of New Orleans Square. Like I just had my beignets, I was my Monte Cristo, and I was good to go.
Yeah, no, that's the best part. Like that's why I have fell in love with Disney parks. You know, if I wanted rides, I'd be a Six Flags guy, you know? But I like atmosphere, and that's why I go to Disney parks, is because of the atmosphere. And I could really, not to say I don't like rides. I love going on Big Thunder Mountain. I love it. You know, I love going on Pirates. I love going on, Mr. Toad and all that stuff. I love it. But the real heart and the real draw for me with Disney is the environment and just
Oh,
being
absolutely.
there. Yeah.
Now, kind of going back when you were mentioning about Comcast and everything. Now, do you feel that Universal kind of has a one step ahead of Disney in that sense, as far as being a little more comfortable with and fluent with their finances? Because since Universal is owned by Comcast, that they kind of have like that extra oomph to kind of hold them over, where Disney is a standalone company, everything is there. They're like the spine of everything that Comcast is to Universal. So do you think there's like a difference in comparison, or do you think that actually Universal has a little bit that one step ahead of Disney?
Well, Comcast has a little bit of an edge because they're also a cable company. So, during a pandemic when everyone's forced to stay home, being a cable company is actually pretty lucrative, so they have that advantage. Disney's not a cable company. They don't own cable. They own networks. They own Disney Plus. They own Hulu, basically, but they don't own. They're not a service provider like Comcast is. So I think in that regard, Comcast definitely has an advantage. Over Disney. Also the advantage that Universal has is that they don't have as their parks don't carry as big of a footprint in their company as Disney. A lot of people criticized Disney about furloughing their cast members, but people don't understand and Universal didn't do that. Universal didn't furlough. But here's the thing. Disney has so many more parks than Comcast worldwide. Okay. Disney has so many parks. I mean, even if you just do the US, they have a lot more parks. And it's financially harder for them to kind of cover the cost, to furlough employees than it would be for Comcast, who they have Universal Hollywood and they have two parks in Florida. It's a vastly different situation than Disney. So Universal has an advantage in that they just have a smaller footprint with the parks than Disney does. Disney, the parks division carries a lot more weight, a lot more.
And not even really just the parks either. I mean, you also have Disney Springs and the downtown Disney district on both coasts. You have, for Walt Disney World, they have 25, 30 hotels.
Yeah.
So there's like a lot more. Disney has a lot more on their plate as far as like inner structure in their resorts than Universal does.
Yeah, I mean, and then you got to throw in the cruise lines, and it's a different animal. You really can't compare the two.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I mean, to me, I just feel that, again, as we were mentioning before, and I mention this all the time, every day since all this started, whether like I'm having a conversation with someone on social media, that I just feel that, and I think Disney is taking the appropriate steps. They're not just opening at full capacity. I could understand if they were opening up to 100% capacity, have all their hotels open, have everything open, and it's like, okay, maybe you're jumping the gun a little bit, and you're going a little bit too fast. But as you had even pointed out, that there was an article stating that the cases that are rising are not coming from the theme parks in Florida.
Right.
And so obviously Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, Busch Gardens, they're all doing something right. And if it's not coming from the theme park, so I just really wish and hope that Disneyland can follow suit with that soon. Because as I said, if someone were to ask me, a month ago, as when we had our conversation, that's like, yeah, Disneyland will be open. It'll open up right after Walt Disney World. It'll be, but it's like, there's like, I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel for Disneyland right now.
No.
And it's just, it is very concerning to the fact of that the parks have never been closed this long, ever. And it's,
Yeah.
how is it going to bounce back from it? Like, what is the impact it's going to do that eventually when the parks do open back up for Disneyland and DCA, what are, obviously it's going to have a hit somewhere.
It's gonna have a hit, oh for sure. And I think that we're gonna see a huge pullback for many, many years. I think unfortunately we're gonna see a lot of layoffs. That is inevitable. That's coming. And I think we're gonna see a lot of projects that we're on the table, ready to go, that are not gonna be implemented anytime soon. One thing I think is going to get axed, maybe not axed completely, but definitely delayed, would be the Avengers e-ticket. I think that's probably not going to happen like, you know, like as originally planned, like within the next few years. There was a lot of rumors about a new Tomorrowland, a renovated Tomorrowland for Disneyland coming up soon. I think that's been probably shelved for, indefinitely. So I think that a lot of these projects are going to take the back burner. I think it's going to be survival mode for at least 3 or 4 years, probably.
Yeah,
And
I
then,
think I think for Disneyland, their main focus now is just to reopen. Take
right.
whatever they got, because people will go back once it reopens.
Oh, yeah.
They already opened up Galaxy's Edge. They have Rise of the Resistance. They have Smuggler's Run. Then they have everything else with DCA and everything. So all they pretty much would like to do is start gaining their money back that they lost
Right.
several months. And then in time, they'll probably take all those back burner projects and move them forward. But including, as you said, with the e-ticket at Avengers Campus, that'll probably be like the Mary Poppins over at Epcot.
Right. And,
So,
and I feel bad for Florida more than I do for us, because I feel like this happened at a worse time for Florida, in terms of like it's the 50th coming up. Epcot was getting its big remodel. Disneyland Resort is kind of at like an off era, so to speak. Like, we kind of already had our DCA 2.0. We had our 50th and our 60th. There's things happening, but nothing huge right now, right?
right.
Florida has a lot of huge things happening, and it's a bummer that it hit right in the middle of it. It would be like COVID hitting right in the middle of the 50th. It's just at Disneyland. It was a big moment for Disneyland. And it's like, to have that huge thing come in and just kind of like, it's disappointing. It
Yeah,
really
I
is.
mean, I wouldn't want it to have it, period. But I mean, if I had to pick and choose, I would have rather it if it had to happen after the 50th. But I'm so glad that it didn't do it during the 50th,
Right.
because
For
that would have, I
sure.
mean, at least that they have a year to kind of get, priorities straightened and maybe, get something up and running so they could have the 50th in some odd shape or form.
When
But
does the 50th? It's 2021, October 2021. Is that when?
October 1st, 2021 is the actual official day.
Okay.
Now, as far as like with the celebration of it goes, I believe that they were going to start kicking it off in, I think, like May or June of
Okay.
2021.
That makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah,
they usually do that.
because they were supposed to have all four parks involved. Each park was supposed to have a special, unique parade or show or attraction for the 50th, and I think that that wasn't even announced at the expo. So being that it was never announced and it was still in development, that pretty much whatever plans that was supposed to be are just going to be scrapped.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, I think yeah, if it wasn't announced, there's no, even the stuff that's announced, they cancel, let
Yeah,
alone the stuff that
yeah,
wasn't,
that wasn't. Yeah. So it's like, but as you said, like with Epcot, I mean, everything that the parks and resorts panel was about Epcot.
Right.
They were going to add the pavilion with like the Central Park type up top where you could watch the fireworks, and
Yes.
they were going to add like a lot of greenery and a lot of like nature stuff. Is like when you walk into the park, and it's like they already had that ripped up by the time the shutdown was, and it was like, as you said, it couldn't have come at a worse time for Walt Disney World and even Epcot for that matter.
Well,
Because
now I Well, now I'm sorry, and I heard that this is the thing that really surprised me because I've been saying for the longest time that that bi-level thing that was gonna have like the festival. I don't know what it was. I don't know what the official name
I
of
think
it.
it's like a festival pavilion.
Festival pavilion that was like bi-level, and you can watch fireworks, and you can, I'm sure there was like a lot of alcohol. That thing, I was like, okay, there's no way they're gonna can that because of the alcohol. It's too lucrative for them. And from what I understand, that's been canceled.
As far as what I heard, that right now it's not like officially canceled, but I mean like there's like no talk of it whatsoever. So it's like it's in limbo right now, where it's still part of the new Epcot experience, but it's not being like pushed forward as much as it was. But I agree with you. I thought if anything, to allow so many people into that pavilion, they
Right.
can make their money's worth, and they won't have to worry about doing festivals around the whole park where it can gain crowds. You would just have that
Yeah.
one section. And then
Yeah.
I really hope, as far as like the Walt Disney statue, they still at
Yes.
least add that.
Yeah, because I was actually talking to a buddy. Shout out to Showcase of Wishes. He's a good friend of mine. He's a big Epcot fan. But I was just talking to him today actually about this, and I said that the Walt statue is something that I feel is really important because Epcot is sort of the Disneyland, quote unquote, of Florida. It's kind of like Walt's other baby. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, definitely.
You need that statue. I love that statue. Him sitting there, he was like sitting down and looking out. It's so perfect. I mean, if they cancel anything at Epcot, at least keep the statue.
Yeah. And I think as far as that goes, I think that they could probably afford that, if nothing else.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even be surprised, to be honest with you, if that statue has already been started. Like they definitely outsource that stuff to like a statue company. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if that's already the ball's already rolling with that. They've already started on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as far as like the front entrance of Epcot, they're still going to have the green, the shrubs, and everything more look like a Central Park feel. As I want the statue more than anything.
Me
Uh,
too.
the festival pavilion, I think will happen, but I think it'll be in the category with uh, Mary Poppins and Spaceship Earth. I think what they're going to try to do is just try to get people back into the parks, make their revenue, and then I think all that will come for Epcot's 50th.
Okay, that's interesting. So Epcot opened in 81, right?
82.
82. Okay, so God, I'm so bad at math.
Yeah, you're
So 50th would be when?
so next year it'll be Walt Disney World's essentially Magic Kingdom, so it'll be 11 years after next year.
Okay. Yeah, you're probably right. It'll probably be around that time.
So if everything does get put on hold for Epcot, I think it'll just be for Epcot's 50th, and that way they can have a big shebang and have everything done in time for Epcot's 50th.
Yeah. Now, what do you think? Okay, like, because right now everything is like kind of on hold. I mean, even the stuff that's open isn't really even fully. It's not really even open. It's like really so throttled that it's like it's almost it's kind of meaningless almost. But like in terms of the Walt Disney Company itself, do you think that it's going to get bad enough that we're going to see major changes? Like they're going to offload certain things or change? What do you think on that? I was going to ask you. I want to get your feeling on that.
I think in a sense we're already kind of starting to see little bits and pieces of that, unfortunately, because even like with Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, that ride is still being pursued because the show building's up. Everything is gutted from Universe of Energy. But at the same time, it's kind of in limbo in a sense, because whatever that ride was supposed to be, they had to start shooting production with the actors from the movie so they could add in the show queue for that. So it's almost to the fact of, okay, are they going to wait until film production reopens, or are they going to just can the show queue, still keep it Guardians of the Galaxy, but kind of put it at a different time zone than what it originally was? So it's almost like one thing that's being cut is affecting the other.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, yeah, that's interesting. And I think that you're going to see, if this continues for much longer and the economic, hurt, deepens, I wouldn't even be surprised if we see a situation where Disney completely offloads the Chinese parks. So Hong Kong and Shanghai. And when I say offloads, I mean, they basically sell their stake and another company runs it, exactly what they do with Tokyo. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a situation where something like that happens.
I agree. I actually agree, because with so many parks that are run with Disney, minus Tokyo, and I have to say, Tokyo does a fantastic job.
Oh yeah.
As far as like keeping up with the Disney traditions and the way the vision of the company of how they see it. I think Tokyo does a really great job. And I actually think that if it did come down to it, I still think Disney would have the upper hand, because they would have these companies that know how to run this kind of business, but it would also alleviate some of the pressure off of Disney's shoulder, so to speak.
Right.
And financially possibly help them out, as far as, because you also have to think, before the shutdown, there were expansions all around every park, every Disney park throughout the world. With the Beauty and the Beast expansion, Galaxy's Edge, Avengers, they were all getting their own lands internationally. So you have to think, Frozen, Tangled, Peter Pan, they were all getting their own lands. A Baymax, Big Hero 6 attraction. There was so many projects going on still that have to have a price tag on it, and it's coming directly from the company itself. So it's like, depending on, how far this recession goes, in order to save, the American parks and keep it going for a little while longer until Disney readjusts and gets back on its feet, they may have to do that.
They may have to do that. And other things like, even other things like ESPN, has been kind of a thorn in Disney's side for a lot of years. They've lost a lot of money on ESPN. It wouldn't shock me a whole lot if Disney decides, you know what, we can sell ESPN, to an outside company. ESPN is a thing that's not like essential to the Disney brand, so they can kind of offload it like they did with Miramax and other things.
If anything, right now it's actually losing them money.
It's losing, yeah. And they can offload that and make money back on that. They can even sell some of the Fox stuff they just recently acquired. They'll keep the stuff they want to keep, the IPs they want, but maybe they'll sell some of the stuff that they don't necessarily need. We might come to that. We might come to that where, because Disney acquired a lot over the past 10 years or so. I think like Marvel is obviously safe. They're not gonna sell Marvel. They're not gonna sell Lucasfilm. These are things that are safe. But I'm talking about more of like the stuff that's kind of like, like when Disney owned the Mighty Ducks and when Disney owned the Angels and they ultimately sold them. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that. Disney owns a lot of stuff that isn't really essential, and they can make some money.
It's like the little nitpicky stuff. Like if you don't really need it, just make some money off of it.
Make some money.
Now, with the Fox deal, that obviously I think we both can agree on that if the Fox deal was still if the acquisition wasn't fully completed by the time this happened, I think Disney would have bailed out.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I wonder, do you still feel that was I mean, no one knows when anything's going to happen. You know, no one expected this. But do you think that that was still a good decision on Disney's part to acquire Fox, or do you think that that is really not an essential to the company?
Um, they probably could have done without it, you know, because Fox was looking to sell. Fox was going to be sold no matter what, right? They wanted to Fox wanted to sell. What I think Disney should have done in hindsight, it's always easier now after the fact.
Yeah,
In hindsight, maybe go to Fox and say, hey, we don't want to buy you out directly, but we want to buy the X-Men. We want to buy the Marvel stuff. We want to buy the Star Wars stuff that we don't have the full rights to. We want to buy this property, that property, Avatar, and kind of do more of a surgical approach. I think that would have been smarter because then it would have been a far cheaper than what they spent, which is like 75 billion.
yeah.
And you would have got just like what you need as opposed to like a bunch of other stuff that really it kind of doesn't
And that
matter.
really makes sense because they needed Avatar, obviously,
Right.
because of Pandora in the parks.
Right.
They needed X-Men because of Marvel. But I
Marvel.
mean, who are we kidding? Are we going to see Kevin McAllister walking around signing autographs from Home Alone? It's like, you
Yeah.
know, we're not going to, you know, and I know that it was more so probably not for the theme parks per se, but it was more for the platform for
Right.
Disney Plus and Hulu and everything. But even to that point, I mean, Disney Plus is doing very well, but you have these slates of Disney movies that were supposed to come out. It was supposed to be a summer full of Disney movies. The Jungle Cruise, the live action
Yeah.
Mulan, Soul. We got nothing so far. And I
Yeah.
thought for how many times that they delayed the live action Mulan, I thought for sure they were going to release it on Disney Plus.
Yeah, they must have a lot of faith in Mulan. They must, I think, and I was at the D23 panel, the studio panel, and saw a lot of that stuff at that panel last year. And the Mulan footage impressed me. That was one of the movies that really, really impressed me the most. It really looked phenomenal. And I think that Disney feels very, very confident in Mulan. They don't want to throw it on Disney Plus because they're going to make a lot less money. I think they really just want to hang on to it until they can put it in theaters because it looked really, really good. There's certain things like Artemius Fowl that was
Yeah.
slated for theaters, and they were like, you know what, screw it, we just put it on Disney
Yeah.
Plus. And I saw that movie, and it was cute. It was a fun little movie, but you know what? It didn't need to be in theaters. It wasn't going to make $300 million or anything like that. Mulan has potential to be a huge, huge blockbuster. They should probably wait it out. Yeah, because if they put it on Disney Plus, you know, it's not the same because you know you can have one subscription and a family of 15 can watch it as opposed to having 15 individual people pay for a movie ticket.
That
You
is
know?
true. And a lot of times, what a lot of people were doing was they really wanted to see The Mandalorian. They would subscribe, watch The Mandalorian, and then unsubscribe.
Right.
So it's like, you know, Disney, and I do understand that as well. And I think the movies that they know will do well, as you said, with like Mulan, Soul, The Jungle Cruise, and they even just released some animation photos from I don't know if the full title of it, Raya and is it the Last Dragon?
Yes, and they showed footage of that actually at D23 last year. I had no idea it was coming. I never heard of it, nothing. They showed us a clip. It was like a 10-minute clip of that movie. And it's like it looked really, really cool. It's like Dungeons and Dragons meets like Asian culture or something. I couldn't even really, it's so hard to explain, but it looked phenomenal. Really like a full-on, full fantasy epic movie. I'm so excited for that one. I really am.
Nice. And then the other one that I didn't even hear of was Luca.
Yeah, that came out the other day. The
Yeah,
concept art looked
like that
cool.
just turned, and they said summer coming into theaters. I think they said summer 2021. So that does give me hope that Disney has this whole slate of projects going on, but they're not letting up. You know, they're going forward with it. So that does give me hope for the future that one day it may not go back completely, but at least maybe we can end up with something.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that a lot of these CEOs of these entertainment companies are going to start getting in the ear of governors like Gavin Newsom and these governors that are kind of like not wanting to reopen, because eventually they're going to start, like, it's going to be like it already is, but it's going to get even worse, where eventually they're going to start telling these people, hey, we need to start open up movie theaters, you know. You also got to keep in mind, and not to inject too much politics into this, but it's kind of relevant to what we're talking about. You know, politicians like Gavin Newsom, they take a lot of money from Hollywood types, you know?
Mhm.
So it's naive to think like, oh, well, Gavin's not going to listen to them. You know, he's going to do what's right. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, they take a lot of money from Hollywood. So if Iger and Chapek and Brian Robert from Comcast are telling them, hey, we need these theaters open, it's, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, it's
Well,
going to
I'll
make
I'll say that
it.
whether, and that's really honestly true, and that's not even just going as far as with politics. That's going like with any type of business. Whether you're a huge fan of Disney, whether you're a huge fan of Universal, Fox, Comcast, Pixar, whatever, at the end of the day, they're businesses. They have executives and businessmen working the wheels to keep the company rolling, and money talks.
It does. It talks big time. So I think that we're gonna see some movement on that, because these companies are gonna start really. I think they're gonna start putting the pressure on. You
Yeah.
know, Disney, they can't keep pushing Black Widow and Mulan and all these things down the road. They're gonna want to get these things released, and I think eventually these governors are gonna cave
And
because
especially since these films are already completed. They
right.
already went through pre-production. They went through the editing. Everything's done. They're rare and ready to go.
Right, exactly. They're ready to go. So I think we're going to see movement soon on the movie theater front, hopefully. Supposedly, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think AMC and like Regal, I think they're trying to open like in mid-August, from what I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. I think that they're going to try a soft opening and maybe like have a number of theaters open with like an X amount of films showing. So I think, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, hopefully, if we can start getting the theaters open and all that, we can start getting back to normal a little bit, and the company can start making some money. Hopefully, the hit won't be too bad.
Yeah. Yeah, so we definitely shall see. But I appreciate you coming on and talking some Disney. And I know a lot of people probably think, it's one of those things that's like, well, let's talk about Disney. It's all the happy stuff, but on
Yeah.
top of everything else, I mean, it's again, at the end of the day, it's a company. It's going to have flaws. It's going to have kinks. It's going to have issues that it has to go through, and especially at a crisis like this, that the bottom line is nothing is ever safe. Security is out the door at this point.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, George. And that's why I love this company so much. And I want it to do well. And I get a little frustrated when fans have a lot of complacency, like, oh, it's fine. It's going to be here forever. Like it's like it's a guaranteed thing. But you have to understand something, that like there's companies that have stood for over 100 years, like Sears and other companies. And I understand every company has a different situation. It's not all the same. But there was a point in the 80s when Sears was like unstoppable. The Sears catalog was like the Bible. I mean, it was like around Christmas time, it was like unstoppable. If you would have said in the 80s, oh, Sears is going to close down in 20 years or 30 years, oh, yeah, right. Yeah, right. It's the biggest company. How could it? You can't think like that, because every company can fall. It's not invincible. Disney's not an exception to that.
Yep.
And even Disney, as recently as like the early 80s, was kind of coming on that point. If it wasn't for Michael Eisner, it probably would have been sold off and broken off into pieces and, dismantled. It was Michael Eisner who really saved it. And a lot of fans are too young to remember that, and what have you. They've only known the Eisner and the Bob Iger eras, where Disney's like this unstoppable force, but it hasn't always been that way. And it doesn't mean it's always going to be that way either.
Yes, exactly. And I think for us true diehard Disney fans that do love the company as we do, that we should be concerned because, as you said, we want the company to succeed. We want them to continue growing and evolving and updating and what have you and expanding. That you can't always, it's almost like, don't be too cautious, but, don't be arrogant.
Right.
It's like you have to have a middle balance that, we all would love to say it's Disney, it's not going anywhere. But we also have to take in consideration, just like with everything, no one knew several months ago that this was going to happen, but yet it happened,
Right.
So it's like, we care about this company so much that, we wanted to see it all the way through. So it's like, we're just kind of giving those reminders out. Like, it's like, let's be careful.
Right, exactly. And like you touched upon a good point when you said like a few months ago, like, if I would have told you a year ago, like when I met you at D23 last year, if I would have told you in a year from now, the parks are going to be closed for 4, 5, 6 months, you would have been like, "You're
Yeah,
right. Come
no,
on."
don't think so.
Yeah, Disneyland hasn't even closed. They go closed for one day at the most, and that was like at 9/11 and the JFK assassination. You're telling me they're going to close for 3 months? Like, no way. And look, it happened. So that's why you always just got to be cautious because you never ever know. It's scary, but I think ultimately, I think it will survive. But I do think I think it's going to be a struggle for a few years, and there's going to be some losses.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
in the end, Disney will come out on top as they always do, but it'll definitely be a rocky road
yeah,
just to get to
definitely.
that point.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for coming on. As you know, I love talking Disney with you, and it's always good to, keep up with how things are going, and hopefully that the next time we have another one of our lengthy Disney discussions, it'll be more positive that possibly Disneyland will be reopening soon, and just got to keep looking out for the future because that's what the company's based on. Walt always said, keep moving forward, never look back. And that's what we as Disney fans have to do along with the company. We have to move with it.
Right, exactly. Well, and thank you for having me on. I always love coming on. Whenever you want me on, I'll be here. And like you said, yeah, I mean, like there is it's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
Exactly.
There's always, we have to stay positive. It's always darkest before the dawn. Things are going to improve. Things might change a lot. The company might look a little different or whatever, but I think ultimately it is going to be okay. But we just have to be careful and see what happens. Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, George, next time we talk, Disneyland is open.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
that would be great. Do you want to let the listeners know where they can find you?
Yes, yes. So you can find me on YouTube, OrangeGrove55. I do videos all the time. I usually do about maybe 2 a week, 1 or 2 a week. And I always talk about mostly the parks, Disney parks, but sometimes I dive into the movies, like Star Wars movies and things like that. So catch me on YouTube. And again, George, thank you so much for having me. I do appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you, most definitely. And remember, folks, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay Disney. Take care.